The Empress's throne room was carved from a single piece of obsidian that seemed to drink light from the air. Davin Keel stood before her with diplomatic credentials that felt increasingly useless. 3 months of border negotiations had collapsed into this moment. Accept an ancient proposal or watch two civilizations slide into war over mining rights neither side actually needed. The union marriage is our oldest solution to territorial dispute, the Empress said. Her voice carried harmonics that Davin's translator struggled to render. My daughter Sarath will wed a human representative. Your people and mine will be bound by blood. Davin had read about union marriages in the cultural briefings, political tools, mostly symbolic, designed to create familial ties between factions. I accept on behalf of the human colonial authority with gratitude for. You haven't heard the conditions. A younger voice, sharp as broken glass. Princess Sarath entered from a side chamber, moving with the controlled precision of someone who'd been trained in combat since birth. She was tall, even for Caravan standards, with long ears that swept back from her head in elegant curves. Her eyes were the color of storm-dark oceans. The union requires the right of unbreaking. Davin's translator offered nothing. I'm not familiar with. You wouldn't be. It's not in your cultural databases because we don't discuss it with outsiders. Sarath stopped 3 meters away, studying him with the focus of someone evaluating a structural weakness. The rite is a wedding night tradition. It tests worthiness through trials of endurance, strength, and will. Sunset to dawn. If you survive conscious and whole, the marriage is valid. And if I don't, then the union is void, negotiations resume, and history suggests war. Her expression suggested she'd made peace with this outcome long ago. Previous suitors have lasted between 2 and 7 hours. Most require medical intervention. Some don't survive. The throne room went very quiet. Davin felt his diplomatic training short-circuit somewhere between most require medical intervention and some don't survive. His mouth operated independently. That seems like relevant information for the initial proposal. The Empress's expression might have been amusement. Would you have accepted if we'd led with it? Probably not, no. Hence the strategic omission. Sarath's long ears tilted slightly, a gesture Davin couldn't read. The rite has governed Caravan royal marriages for 1,000 years. It ensures only the strongest partners join the bloodline. Caravan physiology is more resilient than human. You'll be at a significant disadvantage. Davin looked between the Empress and her daughter, both watching him with varying degrees of expectation. The smart choice was obvious. Decline, return to the negotiation table, find another solution that didn't involve ritualized trials designed to break him. The problem was that 3 months of talks had exhausted every other option. Border hostilities were escalating. Human colonies were already evacuating civilians. If I refuse, he asked, negotiations are declared failed. Military response is authorized within the week. The Empress said it without emotion, stating facts. Estimates suggest 40,000 casualties in the first month. 40,000 people against one very exhausted negotiator's survival. Davin had dealt with terrible math before, but this was particularly brutal. How much preparation time do I have? The wedding is tonight. Sunset is in 4 hours. Sarath's voice held something that might have been sympathy or might have been preemptive resignation. You should know that I don't expect you to succeed. No one does. This will hurt and it will end badly, and I'm sorry you've been positioned where refusing isn't really an option. Are you trying to discourage me or prepare me? Both. Her ears flattened slightly, definitely sympathy this time. The rite isn't designed to be survived by outsiders. It's designed to break people who aren't Caravan. You seem decent enough. I'd rather you withdraw than watch another person fail. Davin studied her carefully. She'd said another person with the weight of someone who'd witnessed this multiple times. The cultural briefings mentioned Sarath was 28 in Caravan years, roughly 32 human equivalent. How many suitors had she watched break? How many had she been forced to test personally? I accept the union marriage and the right of unbreaking, Davin said, before survival instinct could talk him out of it. The Empress nodded as if she'd expected nothing less. Prepare yourself, Ambassador Keel. My daughter will meet you at sunset. Sarath's expression flickered with something Davin couldn't identify before her formal mask returned. 4 hours, she said quietly. Eat, rest if you can. Bring nothing to the chamber, no technology, no weapons, no advantages, just yourself. She left through the same side entrance, her movements fluid and economical. The Empress dismissed him with a gesture, and Davin found himself escorted to a preparation chamber where attendants who wouldn't meet his eyes brought food he couldn't taste and water he forced himself to drink. A caravan diplomat, one who'd argued for the union marriage during negotiations, found him an hour before sunset. You should withdraw, he said without preamble. I pushed for this solution thinking your people would send someone enhanced. Military augmentation, genetic optimization, your baseline human. I'm aware of my limitations. Then you're aware you're going to fail. The right has killed stronger beings than you. The diplomat's ears pressed flat with genuine distress. Princess Sarath has endured 5 failed rites. Each one leaves her more isolated, more convinced that partnership is impossible. Watching you break will hurt her as much as it hurts you. What happens if no one ever passes? Then she remains unwed, and the right continues defining our culture as a test that partnership cannot survive. He moved toward the door. Sometimes traditions persist not because they work, but because no one has the courage to change them. I hope you survive, Ambassador. Not for the negotiations, those can be salvaged through other means, but because someone should prove that the right can end differently. He left. Davin sat alone in the preparation chamber as the sun descended toward the horizon, painting the fortress walls in shades of amber and blood. His hands were shaking. His tactical mind was listing all the ways this could go catastrophically wrong. But 40,000 lives was more than math. It was families, children, people who'd never consented to being part of a border dispute. When attendants came to escort him to Sarath's chambers, Davin followed without resistance. The sun was touching the horizon, and he was walking into something designed to destroy him. But he was walking anyway. Sarath's chambers were larger than expected and completely empty of comfort. Stone floors, bare walls, a ceiling high enough to suggest the space was meant for movement. The princess stood at the center, now wearing minimal ceremonial armor that left her arms and legs exposed. The silver threading in her long ears caught the last rays of sunset. Close the door, she said. Davin did. The sound of its sealing carried finality. The right has 3 components: physical endurance, mental resilience, and emotional fortitude. We begin with the body because it's the simplest to break. Encouraging start. Her ears tilted, surprise maybe. You're making jokes. Previous suitors either raged or went silent. Which approach is yours? Nervous humor. It's gotten me through worse situations. Davin stretched, feeling his human joints pop in ways that reminded him how outmatched he was. Though I'll admit this is setting new personal records for danger. Honesty. Sarath moved into a ready stance. Unexpected. The right begins with the caravan martial form called the standing. You'll hold positions while I test your balance, strength, and pain threshold. Each position must be maintained for 10 minutes. There are 12 positions. 2 hours of holding poses while you, hit me. Apply pressure to weak points. Disrupt your balance. Test whether you break position or maintain discipline. She demonstrated the first stance. Feet wide, arms extended, weight distributed in a way that would stress human musculature within minutes. Caravan warriors train from childhood for this. You'll struggle from the start. Davin moved into the position. His thighs immediately began burning. How encouraging of you to say. I'm being realistic, not cruel. The right is designed around caravan physiology. Humans aren't built for this level of sustained static stress. She circled him slowly, evaluating. You can withdraw at any point. Say the word break and this ends. And the union is void and war starts and we're back where we began. Yes. She stopped in front of him. But you'd be alive and functional. That has value. So does preventing 40,000 deaths. Davin's arms were already shaking. 2 minutes in and his body was screaming. Start the test. I didn't come here to discuss philosophy. Sarath's expression flickered, respect maybe or surprise. Then she moved. Her hand struck his left shoulder with controlled force, testing whether he'd drop his arm to compensate. Davin gritted his teeth and held position. She pushed his right hip, trying to destabilize his stance. He adjusted his weight distribution, maintaining the form even as muscles cramped. Good, she said quietly. Most suitors try to block my hands or counterattack. You're accepting the pressure and adapting. I'm a negotiator. Adaptation is my entire skill set. She almost smiled. Almost. Then she increased the intensity, striking pressure points that sent electricity down his nerves, pushing his joints to angles that stressed ligaments. Davin held the position because releasing it meant failure, and failure meant war. And war meant people who'd never heard of the right of unbreaking dying for political incompetence. 10 minutes felt like hours. When Sarath finally called time, Davin collapsed to his knees, gasping. 1 down, 11 to go, you're doing better than expected. Setting a low bar works in my favor. He forced himself upright. Next position. The second stance was worse, a low crouch that stressed his quadriceps immediately. Sarath resumed testing, but this time she asked questions. Why did you become a negotiator? Because I'm terrible at everything else. Davin's legs were on fire. Failed military training. Couldn't handle engineering mathematics. Discovered I could talk people into agreements they didn't think they wanted. You chose this profession because you failed at others. Her hand pushed his shoulder blade, testing his core stability. I chose it because words felt safer than weapons, less permanent. He held position despite every muscle screaming. Turns out diplomacy has its own casualties. They're just slower and harder to quantify. Sarath paused. Previous suitors had boasted about their strength, their worthiness, their inevitable success. This human was admitting weakness while enduring pain most caravan would quit. Are you afraid right now? Terrified, but fear doesn't change the math. Davin's voice was strained but steady. Withdrawing helps me, hurts everyone else, so I stay. Her long ears tilted forward, genuine interest. You don't resent me for this trial. You didn't design it. You're as trapped by this tradition as I am. 10 minutes expired. Davin collapsed again, his human body reaching limits caravan physiology wouldn't understand for hours yet. How many suitors have you tested? 5. Sarath's voice was quiet. All failed, most within 3 hours. One lasted 7 before his heart gave out. We revived him, but the damage was permanent. She looked at him with something approaching regret. This right was meant to ensure strong partnerships. Instead, it guarantees my isolation. Then why continue it? Because the Empress requires it, because tradition demands it. Because I don't have the authority to refuse. She gestured to the third position. We continue. The hours blurred. Davin held positions that destroyed his human musculature while Sarath tested him with clinical precision. But somewhere in the pain, he realized she wasn't enjoying this. Her questions probed his psychology, seeking breaking points, but her tone suggested she wanted him to answer truthfully rather than break silently. Every time he admitted fear or limitation aloud, her ears tilted with that confused interest. At midnight, during the 7th position, Davin's legs finally gave out. He hit the stone floor hard enough to bruise. I can't, the position is impossible for human joints. Then withdraw. No, change the position. Make it equivalent difficulty for human physiology. He looked up at her, exhausted and desperate. The right tests endurance, not species-specific advantages. Give me something I can actually attempt. Sarath stared at him. Previous suitors had either raged at their failure or accepted it with broken silence. This human was negotiating the terms of his own trial. That's not how the right works. Then we're testing whether I'm Caravan, not whether I'm worthy. That's not the same thing. Davin forced himself into a sitting position. You said this was meant to ensure strong partnerships. Can't have partnership with someone whose biology makes the trial impossible. Her ears were fully forward now, confusion, intrigue, something approaching hope. You're supposed to submit or dominate, not reframe the entire trial. I'm a negotiator. Reframing is literally my job. For the first time since sunset, Sareth laughed. It was brief, surprised, and completely genuine. Then she sat down across from him, her long legs folding with grace his exhausted body envied. What if we finish the rite differently? Not as adversaries, but as partners testing our combined endurance. That violates tradition. Tradition hasn't worked for 5 attempts. Maybe it's time to try something unprecedented. Her storm-dark eyes met his. Can you endure until dawn if we're working together instead of against each other? Davin considered his demolished muscles, his fraying mental state, and the princess sitting across from him like partnership might be possible. Yes, if we're actually partners. Then let's find out what that means. The 8th position became a collaboration. Sarath demonstrated a balanced stance that challenged both their physiologies differently. She held weight distribution that stressed Caravan flexibility, while Davin maintained a human-appropriate form that tested his endurance. They mirrored each other across the chamber, and when one faltered, the other called adjustments aloud. Your left shoulder is dropping, Sarath noted 3 minutes in. Your right hip is compensating too much, Davin countered, his voice strained. They held position for the full 10 minutes together, and when time expired, they both collapsed simultaneously. Sarath was breathing hard, actually exerted for the first time tonight. That was harder than the traditional form. Because you couldn't just watch me suffer, you had to endure equally. Davin rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling. Partnership is harder than domination, requires vulnerability. Is that human philosophy? It's exhausted person philosophy. I'm not thinking clearly enough for cultural attribution. He sat up slowly, his body a collection of bruises and strained muscles. What's the mental resilience component? Puzzles and logic chains under stress. You solve them while I continue the physical trials. Sarath moved to a panel in the wall, activating holographic displays that showed complex mathematical sequences. The idea is that mental clarity fails when the body is breaking. Most suitors can't maintain both. Because you're making them fight you while solving equations. That's not testing resilience, that's testing multitasking under assault. Davin studied the displays. What if we solve them together? You're clearly educated, probably better at Caravan mathematics than I am. The suitor is meant to solve them alone. The suitor is meant to prove worthiness. Does worthiness require isolation or the intelligence to request help? He gestured at the displays. Your choice. Traditional trial where I fail eventually, or collaborative approach where we might both learn something. Sarath's ears were doing complicated things, conflict between tradition and curiosity. Finally, curiosity won. The sequences require pattern recognition across 3-dimensional space, Caravan mathematics as you noted. You'll struggle, then explain them to me. Davin moved beside her, ignoring his body's protests. Teach me while we solve together. What followed was the strangest hour of Davin's life. Sarath explained Caravan mathematical concepts while he applied human lateral thinking to problems she'd been taught to solve rigidly. They argued over methodology, built on each other's insights, and solved the sequences faster than either could have alone. At one point, Sarath made a joke about human stubbornness, and Davin laughed so hard he had to lean against the wall. You're supposed to be breaking, she said, but she was smiling. I'm too confused to break. Your mathematics make my brain hurt more than your physical trials. He pointed at a sequence they just solved. But look, We did it, together. Together, she repeated, like the word was unfamiliar. Her long ears flushed darker at the tips. The emotional component comes next, the questions. What kind of questions? Personal ones, designed to find psychological weak points and exploit them. Sarath's expression went carefully neutral. Previous suitors either lied to appear strong or broke when forced to admit vulnerability. Either outcome was considered failure. What happens if I just answer honestly? No one has tried that. She sat down against the wall, gesturing for him to join her. The stone was cold, but Davin's overheated body appreciated it. What do you fear most? Failure. Specifically, failing people who are depending on me. Davin didn't hesitate. I'm terrified that I'll make the wrong call and people will suffer for my incompetence. Sarath blinked. You're not supposed to admit that immediately. You asked what I fear, that's the answer. He turned the question back on her. What do you fear? That tradition has trapped me in isolation, and I'll never find a partner who survives long enough to know me. Her voice was very quiet. 5 suitors, 5 failures, each one proving that partnership for me is impossible. It's not impossible, the trial is impossible, that's not the same thing. Explain the distinction. The trial was designed to test caravan against caravan. Applying it to other species doesn't test worthiness. It tests biological compatibility with a specific ritual. Davin shifted to face her directly. You're not impossible to partner with. The right is impossible to survive unchanged. Those are different problems with different solutions. Sarath's ears were fully forward, her expression open in a way he suspected was rare. You're supposed to be fighting for dominance or submitting to my authority. Instead, you're deconstructing the trial's foundational premise. I'm a negotiator. Deconstructing premises is half the job. What's the other half? Rebuilding them into something both sides can accept. He checked the chronometer on the wall, 3 hours until dawn. We could finish the traditional rite. I'd probably fail, you'd report my inadequacy, and we'd both be trapped by the same cycle that's defined your previous attempts. Or we could finish differently, prove that the right can test partnership instead of domination. The council will be furious. The council isn't enduring this trial, we are. Davin leaned his head back against the wall, exhausted beyond measure but somehow still functional. Dawn is 3 hours away. What do you want those hours to prove? Sarath was quiet for a long moment. Then she extended her hand, not in challenge but in partnership. That tradition can change, that I'm not destined for isolation, that humanity's strength isn't in matching our physical advantages but in finding unexpected solutions. Davin took her hand. Her grip was warm, her skin textured differently than human. Then let's finish this together, not as test administrator and test subject, but as partners who refuse to let an ancient ritual define their worth. They spent the remaining hours navigating the trial's final challenges side by side. Physical endurance became mutual support. When Davin's human stamina failed, Sarath slowed her pace to match. When her caravan inflexibility made a mental puzzle impossible, Davin offered alternative approaches. They argued, laughed, admitted limitations, and discovered that partnership felt stronger than domination ever could. When the first light of dawn touched the chamber's high windows, they were sitting against the wall together, exhausted but whole, conscious, unbroken. We did it, Sarath said, her voice filled with wonder. We survived, Davin corrected. But more importantly, we changed it. The chamber doors would open soon. The court would demand assessment. Tradition would push back against their reframing, but they'd have dawn to show for their efforts and each other to face whatever came next. The chamber doors opened to morning light and a gathered court whose expressions ranged from shock to outrage. The Empress stood at the center, her face unreadable. Elder council members clustered behind her, their long ears pressed flat with disapproval. Davin and Sarath stood together, bruised and exhausted but upright. Princess Sarath, the Empress said formally, your assessment of the suitor's worthiness. Sarath stepped forward, her ceremonial armor dirt-stained but her posture impeccable. Ambassador Keel survived the rite of unbreaking from sunset to dawn. He endured the physical trials, solved the mental challenges, and answered the emotional questions with honesty I have never witnessed in previous attempts. An elder with elaborate ear ornaments leaned forward. Did he submit to your authority as the tradition requires? No. Sarath's voice was clear, unwavering. He did not submit, nor did he attempt to dominate. He proposed a third option, partnership. We finished the rite together, testing our combined endurance rather than his isolated suffering. The murmuring that followed was immediate and hostile. Another elder stood. That violates the rite's fundamental premise. The suitor must prove individual strength. The suitor proved adaptability, empathy, and the courage to reframe competition as collaboration. Sarath looked directly at the council. I have endured 5 failed rites. Each one left me more isolated, more convinced that partnership was impossible. Ambassador Keel survived not by being stronger than me, but by refusing to fight me. That took more courage than any previous suitor demonstrated. This is unacceptable, the first elder snapped. The rite has governed our marriages for 1,000 years. One human cannot rewrite tradition to suit his limitations. Davin, who'd been silent until now, found his voice. With respect, elder, I didn't rewrite tradition to suit my limitations. I reframed it to test what it claims to measure, worthiness for partnership. His exhaustion made him bold. The traditional rite tests whether someone can survive being broken. That's not the same as being worthy of marriage. You dare lecture us on our own customs. I dare suggest that custom-serving isolation rather than partnership might need examination. Davin moved to stand beside Sarath, deliberately positioning himself as her equal rather than subordinate. Humanity's strength has never been in matching other species' physical advantages. We don't have caravan resilience or endurance, but we excel at adaptation, at finding unexpected solutions, at enduring through connection rather than isolation. The Empress, who'd been watching silently, finally spoke. You survived. The rite's technical requirements were met, but the Council is correct that your method violated traditional execution. She looked at her daughter with an expression Davin couldn't quite read. Sarath, you've endured 5 failed rites. Each time I watched you report inadequacy while your own isolation deepened. Tell me honestly, would you prefer this human survival through partnership or another traditional failure? Sarath's ears flushed darker. I prefer partnership, Mother. For the first time in 5 attempts, I don't feel like the rite proved partnership is impossible. I feel like it proved traditional approaches were flawed. The Empress nodded slowly. The union marriage was proposed to prevent war. Ambassador Keel's survival, regardless of methodology, fulfills that purpose. I declare the marriage valid. The council erupted. Elders shouted about precedent, tradition, the degradation of caravan values. The Empress raised one hand, and silence fell immediately. I also declare that the rite of unbreaking will be reformed. Future trials will test partnership rather than domination. This tradition has isolated my daughter for long enough. You cannot simply change 1,000-year customs. An elder protested. I am Empress. I can do exactly that. Her voice carried absolute authority. Traditions that perpetuate suffering over connection do not deserve preservation. They deserve examination and evolution. She looked at Davin, her expression softening slightly. Ambassador Keel, you rewrote an ancient trial through stubbornness, empathy, and refusal to accept that suffering was the only path to success. That is either profound courage or profound stupidity. Probably both, Your Majesty. Davin's exhaustion made everything feel surreal. I just wanted to prevent war and survive the night. Reforming traditions was an unexpected bonus. The Empress almost smiled. Sarath, take your partner to medical evaluation. He looks ready to collapse. I've been ready to collapse since hour 2, Davin admitted. Sarath took his arm, supporting his weight as they moved toward the door. The council parted reluctantly, their disapproval clear but their authority overruled. In the corridor beyond, away from the court's eyes, Sarath stopped. "You survived. Actually survived." "We survived," Davin corrected. "I couldn't have lasted without you changing the trial with me. I never expected to find a partner who would survive by refusing to fight me." Her long ears were doing that forward tilt thing he was learning meant genuine emotion. Human stubbornness is remarkable. We prefer to call it persistent optimism. He was definitely about to collapse now that adrenaline was fading. Though I'll admit this particular instance probably looked more like delusion. She laughed, that same surprised, genuine sound from the chamber. "The council will resist the reforms. Tradition has deep roots. Then we'll negotiate new traditions, slowly, with lots of rest breaks." Davin's vision was getting fuzzy around the edges. After medical evaluation and possibly a week-long nap. "The union marriage requires we share quarters now, caravan custom. Will there be more trials? Because I should warn you, I'm completely out of endurance. No more trials, just partnership." Sarath's smile was crooked, hopeful. "If you're willing. I just spent 12 hours rewriting ancient alien wedding traditions to avoid war. I think I can handle partnership." He paused. "Though I should mention I'm about to pass out from exhaustion. Medical bay is 2 corridors away. Can you make it?" "If we walk together, yes." They did, moving through the fortress with the first light of dawn painting the stone walls gold. Behind them, the court argued about tradition and reform. Ahead, a marriage built on partnership rather than domination waited to be defined. Davin made it exactly 3 steps into the medical bay before his human endurance finally, completely failed. He collapsed with as much dignity as exhaustion allowed, which was none. Sarath caught him before he hit the floor, her caravan strength making it look effortless. "I've got you, partner." "Good," Davin mumbled, consciousness fading. "Because I definitely don't have me right now." Her laugh was the last thing he heard before sleep claimed him. Exhausted, genuine, and entirely worth 12 hours of ritualized endurance. Traditions could be rewritten. Partnerships could be built. And sometimes, surviving until dawn was victory enough.